Hi there, Kaley O'Kelley here along with Danielle Lerner, ABC15. And we first want to say thank you so much for joining us for this town hall. We know that this has been an interesting time, to say the least. I don't even think that's the right word. But when it comes to COVID-19, when it comes to the pandemic, and when it comes to our children and some of the anxieties that maybe a lot of us are feeling as parents, as children. And that is why we are visiting today with Dr. Janice Johnston. She's the Chief Medical Director of Redirect Health. Maybe you've seen her on ABC 15 Mornings. We've done some town halls on our show there, and we sure appreciate your time today. Along with Sarah Skemp, who is the chair of Arizona School Counselors Association. And we're so thrilled to have your voices with us today. And Danielle, you lead our education coverage. You've done such a great job of really being all encompassing and telling the story because schools are such a huge part of what we're all about here in Arizona. They're part of our future.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how many people have been impacted just on the education front when you consider families, students, teachers, their families, school staff. I mean, just it's amazing what has gone into this school year. And so, between last week and this week, we've had upwards of, I want to say, almost 24 districts resume or expand their in-person learning options. Some of these students have been remote for a year, and so this might be their first week back of in-person learning. So it's a big adjustment for families, for students, for everybody involved. So the purpose here today is to really address some of those concerns that people in the community may have, whether it's physical health concerns, regarding spread of COVID-19, vaccine questions, or, there's that whole social emotional wellness component for adults and kids, really. I mean, this is a big shift for a lot of families. So our goal today is to answer some questions, to try to give you the information you need to make this transition successfully. And so if you have comments, please put them below. Kaley and I can see those, and we'll go ahead and get some of those answered as well. But just as we start here, Dr. Johnston, I want to go ahead and start with you, just as kind of a general question. What sorts of questions or concerns are you hearing from folks in the community regarding schools resuming in-person learning and people going back to the classroom?
Yeah, I think overall, families and students both are ready to go back. They miss being in person. And I think all of us probably feel that in-person learning is better than trying to learn online, especially for those younger students. They are worried about COVID-19 and am I going to get sick and how to prevent that, especially the teachers. And I think that's a big concern. Certainly over the past year, parents are becoming more and more frustrated if their child is exposed or has a sniffle or a earache or a sore throat or what have you, and having to go back home again. Just understanding testing needs and when to isolate, when to not isolate. I think overall people are just ready to get back at it. But in terms of feeling questions about worrying about their child becoming sick from COVID, I do think that that's become less and less of a concern, but still a concern for the staff that's working in schools.
Sure. I see a question coming in. Thank you so much to our viewers who are sending these great questions already our way. Tara J writes about this, and Sarah, this is for you. And obviously, Dr. Johnston, would be great if you could chime in. But she says, how do you all feel about the need for more mental health lessons in education versus academics? Is it possible? How would funding allow for that? I mean, I know the funding would be probably a question for lawmakers, but my goodness, considering we're sitting here talking about anxiety, we're seeing people across the board, whether it's education, whether it's work, whether it's going to a sporting event, these mental health issues need to be addressed in some way, shape, or form.
And I agree with that. The mental health issues need to be addressed or they won't be able to focus on their academics. I always say Maslow before Bloom. Maslow focuses on their social and emotional needs of our students and our staff as well. It's all educators. And addressing those, and is there time? Schools need to make time, and it's very challenging if they have a school counselor in their school. If they're fortunate enough to have that, school counselor will be able to do lessons or at least reach out to the individuals who have stronger impact with this transition back into an in-person. I know the younger ones, a lot of their issues may be attachment. They're used to being at home. for a really long period of time. They're used to their parents around. And then this change, but having that communication with your school, the school counselor, teachers, educators are ideal at noticing changes in students. And they, from a Zoom conversation to an in-person, I pick up on body language maybe more. But I do think it is possible and it is necessary to address the social emotional needs of our students and staff. And the academics will come later and more naturally once the students are prepared mentally for it.
And I think we touched on this before this began, was that, this idea of routine. We know that kids thrive on routine, and, whether they've been at home, whether they've been in person, any shift in that is going to cause, maybe have them off balance a bit. So Sarah, what do you recommend, especially for those families who maybe recently just went back to in-person learning? They're starting to navigate this process. What's a good way to help with that transition? Are there certain steps that families can take to help with that?
Well, first of all, it's just having the conversation with your young child or children, saying, this is what you can expect when you get to the school. You're going to go to the elementary, you're going to be in this classroom, the teacher will be there for you. There'll be other principals there for you. Name the titles of some of the people, because they might not know who the principal is because they Zoomed with their teacher this entire time. Who the school counselor is. Most of the school counselors have been doing online virtual lessons with them this entire time. And just saying, where things are. And I know educators are showing the students where to go, what to do, reinforcing that idea, we're here, you belong here, we're safe here is a key word that's being used a lot in the schools. It is a safe place for you. It is, we're all here trying to adjust to our new, and that we are going to get through this together. And speaking up for the students, the educators will always speak up for the students, and they'll notice the nonverbal cues as well, but noticing that as well with parents. If the child comes home and says, how's your day? The younger students will probably babble on, oh, blah, 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 blah. And the older students will be like, fine. And just maybe asking more specific questions. How hard was it for you today? Did you have any issue with the mask? Did you have any issue with at lunchtime? Did you have any issues at recess time? Being very specific with questions about what a day would look like. Do you feel like you had fun today? Did you feel like you felt heard today? Again, those social emotions. Did you feel a little anxious? And they might be anxious for a few days. Again, some of them are just coming back this week. It takes a while. That transition time doesn't happen overnight. And for some schools, they might be on a different track. They might be doing something different on different days. They might have an exploratory or a different teacher coming in for like art or music. And so that might be a little change, but having that conversation, like what to expect today, what to expect for tomorrow when they come home, but always reinforcing how was your day. But that's told general. Some kids will not like that question. And so being very specific, like what happened at lunch today? What happened in your math class today? And very, and then hopefully that expands, and just checking in. Again, teenagers have a harder time with that. Leave me alone. I'm okay. I'm fine. And the younger ones will be more open to that. But acknowledging that it is a change for them, and then it's okay to feel maybe a little anxious, maybe even noticing that their sleep pattern might be off. Those are things that are going to happen until they get used to being in school all day. It's exhausting to be in school all day.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially since they've been learning from home with a lot of intermittent breaks.
Yeah.
Which is, when we came back, and there's somebody asking, she's asked a couple of times, Danielle, if you and I have kids in school, we both do. They're mm-hmm. different ages. You have little kids.
Yes.
And I don't want to volunteer your information. You feel comfortable? I know you do. We talk about this stuff all the time. My kids are in elementary school, and you want to address this first, Danielle, and then I'll go in.
Oh yeah, sure.
So people know where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Kaley, we chatted about this a little while ago. So I have little ones. I have a 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And they, full transparency, they'd been home with us pretty much the whole time until about August of last year. And then with everything and all of us trying to work from home and be home, it wasn't working. And so we wound up finding a fantastic preschool daycare that they go to 3 days a week. And I was nervous about it, I'll admit, because I'm thinking, who puts their kids in, who starts their kids in daycare during something like this. But thankfully, they've followed all the mitigations, and we've been very comfortable. And it's been honestly, it's been very good for all of us, having them there and learning and having us be able to focus on work. So there was a lot of anxiety happening in the house before that. But, I have noticed even just lately, because, we talk about routine and things shifting and impacting kids, my schedule's been kind of all over the place lately, and I can feel my older one picking up on that. And so, that's another reason we thought it was important to bring this to our viewers, because, if we're experiencing things like this, I'm sure other parents with kids at all sorts of ages are experiencing it. So, Kaley, I know your kids are a little older, so you're probably seeing different feelings and emotions and challenges with them.
Right. So we've done the in and out of schools. And Dr. Johnston, I'm going to be talking to you about this here momentarily, but the school district that we're in, after spring break last year, it was kind of like on that Friday, bye-bye. And then we didn't go back to school until August. And August was a fear fest around here. So we really have worked together on fear and not being afraid, but talking about our feelings. And my kids' school, they have a mindfulness coach, and I've actually emailed with her quite a bit and visit with her about some of the things I can say to the kids when we're driving home from school. My daughter, who seems to be very happy-go-lucky on the surface, I've learned she's in the second grade. She had some genuine fears because of some of the things that she'd been hearing about on the news. My son absolutely detested wearing the mask, but he's adjusted to it, and they are now extremely happy that they are back in school with their friends, even though they're kind of podded up, right? They have little pods of kids that they hang with, and I just have to commend their teachers. Both of them, they got vaccinated as soon as they possibly could. One of them, had a few complications after that second shot, like we're hearing, but she was back at it a couple of days later, and I just can't thank them enough for getting back into the mix. But Dr. Johnston, I wanted to talk to you about this, because I would imagine a lot of parents are coming to you just from a medical perspective and asking you some questions about that.
Yeah, so I think, in the district where I work the most, the kids have been in school for quite some time. Of course, they took a break after Christmas. I think with the younger children, it's been a challenge for them to wear a mask all day long. They get bloody noses, they lose teeth, they chew holes through their mask, things like that. So there's issues just in terms of trying to keep little ones with masks on all day long. That's sort of a big deal. The other issue that I hear quite frequently is that sometimes parents may not be forthcoming with what's going on at home because they want the child to be in school, and understandably so. But perhaps there might be COVID at home, or there might be symptoms of COVID at home, and we're just all so sick of this, right? So not taking it as seriously as we perhaps were at the beginning of all of this. So I do hear that from parents that are frustrated that others within a school might not be taking it as seriously anymore. And I think that's just fatigue from the whole thing, from our community. We are getting kind of sick of it, but just to know that it is still out there. Obviously, our numbers have dropped off tremendously, which is just awesome. And I think overall, I think everybody is just anxious to get back at it, not maybe having anxiety about going, but they just want to get back to it. The other thing that I do hear from parents and from children and teens too is just that maybe they feel like they're behind because they've been home for so long, and they feel like it's going to be a struggle to keep up with the work that they're expected to do. Definitely, I think teachers are obviously well aware that some kids are going to be far behind than the rest of them. Everybody's at a different level. So just to talk to your children about that, to be open, accept extra help, and work with your child where you need to try to get them back up to where they need to be. Definitely keeping people on a schedule Children thrive on a schedule. So do we, right? And to make sure that we're sticking to that. You know, kids and adults too, we spend far too much time on our screens, and you know, kids have phones, they're on TikTok till late at night and those kinds of things. Make sure that they're getting their rest, because that's going to, you know, make sure that they're successful when they go back to school.
And Dr. Johnston, you had a good point about the fear of the academic loss or feeling they're behind. Mm-hmm. And I know educators are doing everything in their power to help the students get back to where they are. And they're going to have programs in place, whether it's after school or summer. Again, nothing happens overnight, but just having that conversation with the educators or the principal at the school to say, how can we help my child, whether it's that after school program or coming in a little earlier for that tutoring session or getting some tutoring, or now the teachers will have a better, even in person, I think they'll have a better understanding where each of their students are, and can give that information out to parents and the students themselves as well, to say, this is how we're going to help you, and this is what the plan for the future. And I know schools are somewhat scrambling still, because it was for some schools, it was very quick, like a quick turnaround. And so they're adjusting to the turnaround time. But I know, as we did before, how we adapted from thinking we would be in school to we weren't, how we adapted the education for our students, and we will continue to do that for our students.
Yeah. The other thing that I would, you know, recommend to parents is, when it's your opportunity to engage with your teacher, make sure you show up. You know, if there's a parent-teacher conference, don't wait till the last minute. You know, engage with them and spend some quality time with your teacher and your child, to make sure that you know where exactly they're at and what you can be doing to work on things at home. Oftentimes, you know, we all live busy lives, but you know, to carve out that time to use the communication tools with your child's teacher, and do realize that they're responding to, you know, sometimes a lot of other parents' concerns about their child too. So read what's coming home, and just engage and be part of the solution in the process for your child's learning.
Proactiveness is always helpful.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen a few comments on the side regarding vaccines and questions about, you know, kids getting the vaccine, you know, now that it's open to 16 and up. Dr. Johnston, would you mind just giving kind of an overview of where we're at with the vaccine process, and maybe for anyone who has, you know, questions or concerns about 16, 17, 18-year-olds, you know, some of those younger folks getting the vaccine. What's kind of your take on this?
Yeah, so it was, as of today, I believe that Arizona has lowered the age and opened up vaccinations from 16 on up. And so there's no restrictions in terms of conditions or any of that kind of stuff, which is, when you think back of where we were a year ago with a brand new virus and not really knowing much about it, that now we have a vaccine that's available for our whole state. It's a pretty remarkable feat for the scientific and medical community to have come this far. You know, right now, Pfizer is the vaccination that's available from 16 and up, and the others are for 18 and up. So there are going to be some school-age children that the vaccine is available for you. Parents should know that the vaccine has been studied in these age groups, and we see no difference in terms of its efficacy or safety profile in any of those age groups. So that's an awesome thing. And right now there are studies underway through all of the vaccinations to look at children from 12 and up. And then it will also start for children younger than that too. We don't expect any differences in terms of the safety or the efficacy in the younger age groups moving forward, but probably just need to look at if the dosing will need to change. If you look at flu shots, we actually give the same dose of flu shots for children right on up to adults. And so for vaccination, sometimes we'll change the dose. It might half or be less, but we just don't know in terms of the younger age groups what will happen with that. Yeah, I think right now that it's opened up to pretty much all age groups except the younger ones. People are going there's going to be more people wanting appointments than there is availability for appointments. That certainly has been a cause of frustration all the way around. But, if you look at the percentage of people who have had one vaccinations or have completed both vaccinations, we're doing tremendously well. And I'm, certainly very, very thankful that our state and our country has been able to get it ramped up. Are there issues? Absolutely. It's a feat to be able to administer all of this, keep track of, what dose you're giving, what product you're giving. Even at the stadium, I mean, they're running that 24 hours a day. So, give them a nice high five and thank them for what they're doing, because it's a lot. And I know that people are super frustrated with having access to getting appointments, but I really do think that things are starting to roll along. We've got our warm weather is going to be coming up here soon, right? We're enjoying some amazing weather right now, but that's probably going to throw some logistical tweaks into our system as we move into our really, really hot summer months. Will the drive-through make sense? Maybe for the person getting it who's in their air-conditioned car, great, but maybe not for the person who's working that line, standing out in 110, 15, even 20 degrees on some pavement. So I'm sure there are going to be some adjustments that will probably need to be looked at down the road. But I would just encourage everybody, now that everybody's pretty much eligible except for the younger children, to look into it. And, this is what we're shooting for, is to try to get to herd immunity. And that's looking for 75 to 80% of our population to get to this point. And we're getting there. And I think now that there are so many more doses that are going to become available, that we're going to really see that we're going to get to this level. And hopefully by the summertime, we're going to get back to some normalcy in all of our lives. I know me personally, I'm dying to go to a concert. I'm a huge music fan. And that's why I want everybody to get their shot, so we can start having some music again, and we can get enjoying everything that we miss so much.
Yeah. Dr. Johnston, I want to ask you a question for a few reasons, and it's actually coming in from someone who's with us, Bianca All-Star Bowl. Hi, how are you? Good to see you here. And I think it's interesting because we're talking about 16-year-olds now eligible to get a COVID vaccine here in Arizona. But when we talk about the flu vaccine, and we talk about right around the corner being September, moving back into that flu season, she's asking this: is it safe for 16 and up to get the COVID-19 shot, and then come September get their annual flu shot?
Yeah. And we see no contraindication to getting both of those vaccines in 1 year. We do, however, recommend that people do not, and this would be applied to adults as well, is not to get another vaccination right around the same time as you're getting your COVID-19 shot. So if you're thinking about, say, getting a shingles vaccine or something like that, you probably want to space that out by about a month out, just to give the one shot at a time type of deal. But definitely no concern about getting the annual flu shot come the fall. And we do encourage everybody to continue to get those. This year the incidence of the flu was really, really super low. Part of that was probably all the social distancing and masking, staying home when we're not feeling well. I'm sure that had a huge thing. Now, come the fall, I'm sure, we're hoping, right, that all of this is changed and we're getting back to more normalcy. So we'll see what happens with the flu season next year. But yeah, no reservation at all in terms of getting that come the fall.
That's great. And then Sarah, I actually had a question for you. I know that in your particular district, you have elementary all the way up through high schoolers. Can you talk a little bit about some of the unique concerns, issues that you guys as counselors are watching in, your elementary kids versus your middle school versus your high school? Because, I'm sure there's different issues for each age group.
So in elementary, we're mostly looking at the attachment issues. Excuse me. attachment issues because, again, students were home for so long with their families and they're younger, and then they want to be around their families and parents. And then adjusting to a group setting and learning in a classroom environment. I do know, like, those counselors are teaching them about coping mechanisms, like teaching them how to breathe, or the mindfulness that was discussed a little earlier. Again, those coping mechanisms, we call them tools in our toolbox that they can use, and students are learning about that at the elementary level. And again, it's how to self-regulate, self-manage their all their emotions, not just the fears, but their happiness. And because sometimes you can't just be jumping up on the tables being happy either. So just adjusting to all that. The middle school, a lot of the issues are more peer interactions and the peer relations. So learning how to adapt to that and addressing those issues and how to communicate with one another as best we can. High school, again, peer socialization, socializing. They miss going out and having fun with their friends. They miss the spirit of us high school and doing the pep assemblies and all those things that had to be put on hold for a while. And then getting ready for the what's next. A lot of the seniors are concentrating on their college or post-secondary plans and the uncertainty of not knowing what it is exactly and hoping it's going to be a certain way. Just going through those and making sure that that's taken care of. We're just always addressing this responsive services, and a student is upset about something, personal lives, relationships, and just addressing those as much best as possible.
Great. I've seen a couple other mentions as well in the comments regarding variants, and specifically, I'm trying to remember where that comment was, but there's some concern about with all of the variants, now we're bringing twice as many people back into a classroom because now you can have 3 feet instead of 6 feet per CDC. So just some concerns there regarding variants. Dr. Johnston, what are you telling community or folks in our community who might be concerned about the variants and the potential of, kind of undoing some of the progress that we've made?
Yeah. So, variants are higher in other parts of the world. And so it would be, wise to continue to be cautious and concerned about it because we just don't know. We expect, variants will probably show up all around. But it's important to continue to follow the good safety guidelines that we have. And until we get to that herd immunity, we do think that the vaccines that we have in play will be effective for the variants. So that's important to know. By continuing to wear masks, to social distance and washing hands, stay home with your sick. We do feel that that's what's going to continue to keep us safe moving forward.
Sarah Skemp, and for people who are just tuning in, this town hall obviously about anxiety. Sarah is the tool of the station. You bring up a very good point. You talked about, really just giving ourselves some grace here and really giving ourselves a break when it comes to that feeling of anxiety as a parent, or even that anxiety as a child thinking, I'm never going to catch up. Well, you know what? We're all going through this together. Maybe that's something we can remind ourselves of when, the report card comes back and the kids aren't getting the straight A's or the B's or whatever. What I'm learning is, and maybe it's an excuse I'm making for myself, I don't know, but it's okay to fall down sometimes, and that's something I don't know that I knew myself, because we try so hard, but maybe it's a silver lining with this pandemic, just learning to go, okay, well, I didn't get that one so right this time.
I agree with that concept because we have to change to our situations, whatever it may be, whether it's a COVID pandemic or something else that may happen in our lives. We've had tragedies, students suffer tragedies, dealing with things, and how to cope with those things and accept that we need our time to adjust, need our time to grieve even, because it's been a different little world that we lived in, or we are living in. And then saying, now where do I go from here on forward? I can improve my life this way. I can do better in the next test. I can do better in my next paper and academically. And allowing ourselves the opportunity to say, okay, I didn't do as well as I could have or hoped to do. I'm going to do better in my future. That our story is how do you handle when you have a setback? That's your coping mechanisms, and that you're willing to say, I'm not going to give up, that perseverance concept, that I'm going to keep going, and sort of like say, we get to start over at a certain point and we're going to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is, so important, Kaley. I know we talk about this on the rare chance that we get to see each other in person at the station of, just trying your best and doing everything you can. And sometimes it's throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And, I feel like that's been a big part of this. In fact, I just finished up last week, we had a series of stories. There were 4 different stories where I revisited, I think there were 6 or 7 families who we had originally talked to last July, who were just starting remote learning, had no idea what the school year was going to bring. And we caught back up with them. Some of them had been back in person for months. Some of them were just going back this week. And one thing I found that was constant in all of them, and these are all different grades, all different parts of the valley, all different circumstances, but the things that I found that were the same for all of them was there was that underlying anxiety, even if their kids were in school, of obviously the virus, but is my child going to be sent home to quarantine? Is the school going to close? Just those underlying feelings that parents and students had that as well. And then also for those who were remote learning this whole time, that concept of throwing things at the wall. Okay, what setup works? A couple of the families had 4 kids remote learning in the house. So they started with all of them in one room and quickly realized that didn't work. So they, divvied them up all over the house. And all of them trying to see what worked and being flexible. And then the third thing that I thought was really nice, actually, kind of a silver lining, was that all of them talked about the increase in family time that they've had, whether it's because mom and dad were working from home and they were there too, whether it's because they couldn't really do much else, so they were kind of stuck together. But just, it was really nice to hear that part of it, of focusing on some of the good things that have come out of it. So I think it's nice to remind ourselves that we are kind of in this shared experience and, we're not alone in going through all of this.
And there really is no right answer.
Yeah.
It's your children, your family, and how you adapt and how you will work through it. And each child, even in your own family, your oldest child might handle something differently than your middle child or your youngest child. You adapt to that child's needs. You adapt to the parent needs. You have to figure out, okay, how can we do this as a family? And there's going to be more than one answer in your household, probably, to be able to say, okay, like you said, not everybody can work in the same room, obviously.
Yeah.
So then coming up with a plan to do that. And then, older students are probably helping with the younger ones as well. Yeah. And just having that responsibility. So there's a lot of things that are happening, but just learning to say, we are in this together. We're going to get through this together. And the outcome will be whatever happens at the end. We're going to make the best of it and, keep trying. And, perfectionism, I struggle with those who feel they have to be perfect in everything. I feel this is really not an ideal time for them because they are used to a certain way. And so I'm sure they're struggling with accepting the fact that it can't be perfect.
Yeah. That's one of the things Danielle and I were talking about. It's been about a month ago or so. We were just talking about parenting. I have a son who he likes the structure. I mean, he does so much better with structure. And, when things don't go the way he's used to, right, the world can fall apart. And I mean, as adults, this happens as well. And so I found a book and it was all about this thing called flex thinking. And now when the world starts to feel like it's not really an easy place to be, we talk about flex thinking. So again, I mean, trying to look at the glass half full, because obviously parents or kids are looking at us, we're their rock. One of the things I have to remind myself is, hey, you know what? Things aren't going to go the way we thought they might go today or this week or this month or this year, right? So I have seen a big change in this child who's only 9, right? But he's like, I can see sometimes, right? Because sometimes a lot of days are not as easy as others, but you see those wheels spinning and he's thinking, okay, this isn't the way we planned it, but I'm going to try to breathe through this. And when he can't breathe through it on his own, he gets little reminders like, flex thinking.
Yeah.
It reminds me too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. There's a comment here from Julie Myers. This was back probably about 12 minutes ago, 12:23, and she's asking about the specific vaccine. So she's looking for a particular vaccine like Johnson & Johnson, but I know this is something that Kaley, our Health Insider team has covered quite extensively. As far as does it matter which one you get? Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, should you be trying for a specific one, or is it if you can get it, just get it?
Yeah. So definitely, I would take whatever one is available to you. So the one nuance, though, is the Pfizer is the one from 16 and up. The others are 18 and up. So that would be really the only nuance. The nice thing about Johnson & Johnson is that you're one and done, right? So it's kind of nice that way. You don't have to worry about planning a second shot or anything like that. But in terms of, I know some people get concerned when they hear about the percentages of effectiveness. We do know that all of the vaccines are, their effectiveness in terms of preventing severe disease, hospitalization, and death is all super, super high. So whatever vaccine that you can obtain and get an appointment for, I would encourage you just to go ahead and take that. If you're interested to look for a particular one, when you go on maricopa.gov and you look for the different COVID-19 vaccines, some will show you what type are available at those different locations. We do recommend that if you start with Moderna, you end with Moderna. So we want you to complete your series with the same brand. I know that there have been some people that have had one shot of one and one shot of the other. And it does not mean that you need to start the process over again. If you mix them up, we prefer that you stay with the same manufacturer. But the CDC has made exceptions. These are exceptional times, and they've made exceptions for that. So that's another thing maybe to keep in mind as well.
I want to add something. We're talking about eligibility too today, being open here in the state for the state-run sites for 16 years of age and older. We might have some people who are joining us right now who got on to try to get one of those appointments. I believe there were about 30,000 appointments available as of 8 o'clock. Well, shortly after 8 o'clock, we were able to report that all of those appointments had been booked. They booked in 20 minutes.
Crazy.
And so there was a report that it was don't lose hope, because I believe it's 80,000 of those appointments will become available on Friday morning at 11. And I know that we've been listing the website to go on to register Friday morning at 11, which is hopefully we'll pull it up. I think it's there it is, podvaccine.azdhs.gov. You can also dial 211. And then ahead of time, if you go on to that particular website, you can register yourself so that when you go on Friday morning, it becomes a much easier process, not as lengthy, and you're good to go.
Yeah. And I would encourage people who have someone in their mix that's not really savvy with computers, maybe doesn't even have a computer. I had a patient the other day who didn't have a computer and didn't have a smartphone. So she normally would go to the library to use the computer. Now she was going to like a FedEx location where you could print things out. And the poor thing was having to pay per minute to sit there and, try get an appointment. So help your buddies out and see if there's something you can do for your neighbor or your family to help them to get an appointment. I think we all need to be in this together to try to find solutions. But I do think that you're going to see more and more locations open up for availability to get vaccinations done. And I think that's coming very soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and while we're talking about, accessing the computer and being on the computer, Sarah, I'm curious from a school counselor's perspective. A lot of kids have spent a lot of time on screens in the last year, whether it's for school, whether it's iPads or other things, because mom and dad are working, there's been a lot of screen time. Now that kids are getting back to in person, if they're choosing to do so, how do you navigate that with with younger ones as far as kind of managing that screen time now, and just watching kind of how they're interacting with their technology.
Right. And that's always been important prior to the pandemic, because screen time can be an important tool for a student, even at a young age. But minimizing that time or setting a routine of when they're allowed or how long they're allowed to use it allows for more development brain-wise and socialization skills, and just having that conversation and having the guidelines saying you can only have it for an hour at this time, and you can only do it for so much time, but also paying attention to what the screen is doing and saying. And I know it's extremely tiresome for parents. They have so much going on, but you do need to check in on your child's iPad, your child's phone, to see what they're looking at and what kind of websites they're attending or what they're doing, and having that conversation why they shouldn't do this or why this is a good website for them to be with on a limited basis. I know that in high school, they seem to think they can't live without their phones, and that's a challenge because that's their connection. That's also their social connection, especially now that they can't always be together outside of the school or in the classroom. And they feel like I need to have that in their, TikTok or Snapchat or whatever they're wanting to use now. And so allowing that, but still having that limitation, because you would say you have to have some boundaries. There's other things to do, and it's okay not to be on your phone, not to be on a device at all times. And with the transition back, it might be a little easier for the parents to say, okay, now you're not used to we're getting to a world that you don't have to do this for school. And as a reminder, they're still going to probably need some devices for school for their homework and other activities or communications with the teachers and staff. And so having that conversation as well. But being a parent, you have to say there's set times, removing the devices from the bedroom when they're sleeping so they actually sleep at night or try to sleep at night, I think always helpful. And having that conversation, especially as they're older, they think they don't need it, but actually their brain needs more rest.
Yeah.
I think I need that reminder too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and actually Megan Thompson, and as part of our Rebound Arizona team, she just did a great story on, I think it's the city of Tempe is actually working with high school students to help them with interview skills, because they've been interacting so much through a screen, of just reinforcing some of those in-person connection skills and things that may have kind of gone by the wayside during the pandemic. So I encourage everyone to check out our Rebound Arizona section as well. It has some great resources on there for parents, kids, and families. So hard to believe but we are approaching the end here. We have been going almost 43 minutes talking about this. It's amazing how quick it goes. And we so appreciate all of you in the comments for chiming in, for joining this conversation. Dr. Johnston, Sarah, thank you both so much for your insight and for your time today. Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate that. And yeah, Kaley, I know as far as Health Insider stuff going on, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye here today.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. We are working on a story right now about kids living with ADHD and ADD and the pandemic, and really an interesting thing that's come to be. A couple of the healthcare experts that I'm talking with say that they were surprised to see a lot of kids who have been diagnosed with ADHD are doing better in the online learning platform when they have a certain atmosphere to work with, of course. And also there's been some staggering information about parents with kids who have ADHD. A lot of discovery, and that's that a lot of parents are being diagnosed with ADHD as well. So we'll be having that story on ABC15 mornings next week. And, that's one of the greatest things about what we get to do, because so many of you write in, you ask us questions, we get to go investigate and then give you some answers.
All right. Sounds great. And again, thank you so much to all of you for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of the day. This will be available on the ABC15 Facebook page, our YouTube, and then also we have a town halls page as well, abc15.com/town hall, where we post all of the town halls that we've done throughout the past year. So we hope you'll check that out. All right.